Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Hello there, you're welcome to Ghana Tonight. I'm Keminni Amanor. Let's get into our top stories. Not in this chamber. Tonight, Majority Caucus prevents convicted Akwetia MP from making any comments on the floor, sparking a raucous disagreement and forced end to parliamentary business. Also tonight, Amnesty International wants more than just bail for murder suspect Gregory Afoko, who is set to be released after 10 years on remand and 1 mistrial. Plus, President John Dramani Mahama to face the nation in his first State of the Nation address. Tonight, we're hearing your voices as we ask, how's the state of your nation? Come your way. Those are the big stories tonight. You can stream us on Facebook, on YouTube, on x.com and 3news.com. But right now you're live on TV3. If you'd like to be a part of the conversation as we have it, so remember, you can do so by using the hashtag Ghana Tonight. Right now, let's bring you Ghana Brief.
Proceedings of Parliament on Friday ended in a drama when the Speaker was forced to adjourn sitting due to heated exchanges on the floor. A statement to be delivered by the embattled MP for Akwetia, Ernest Kumi, was arrested by the majority, which said the lawmaker has been convicted by a court pending sentencing and should not be allowed to make the statement. A furious minority described the move as unfair, causing an eventual adjournment.
If you wouldn't allow me, I will go ahead, suspend the House, and you will not adjourn the House, Mr. Speaker. They want an adjournment. We will argue the case today. We will argue no adjournment. Honorable You members, got your application. You are right the now. time is 5 to 4 o'clock. You are in my hands. The House is accordingly adjourned.
Nana Yao Osei, lawyer for Gregory Afoko, who is accused of involvement in the murder of former NPP Upper East Regional Chairman Adams Mahama, has asserted that his client's trial was politically motivated. Nana Yao Osei's comment comes after his client was granted bail by the Accra High Court following nearly a decade of being on remand.
Nobody can convince me that there wasn't any political hand pushing the matter. Why would the police decide that they won't bring somebody to come and execute a bail bond? You think the police on their own, what interest did they have? Somebody clearly was pushing the police. And I say this without any contradiction. I am very clear in my mind.
The Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association has suspended its intention to go on strike. The association took the decision after receiving commitment from the Minister of Health, Kwabena Minta-Akando, that no nurse or midwives recruited after December 7 will be sacked.
No health worker recruited last year will be dismissed. The Ministry of Health, including the Ghana Health Service and CHAC, has not terminated the employment of any health worker. We are committed to building and sustaining a strong health workforce.
The Northern Regional Hospital is facing an imminent shutdown due to mounting debt of approximately 3.3 million cedis stemming from overpayment made to the hospital by the National Health Insurance Authority. The hospital is appealing to the government for waiver to keep the facility running.
This hospital is supposed to be the referral center for most of the facilities around. We refer a lot of cases here. We have the largest number of doctors apart from TTH. And because of this situation, operating this hospital is very difficult.
From March 2nd, Ghanaians can expect a more reliable power supply as maintenance work on the West Africa gas pipeline nears completion. Energy Minister John Jinapor, during a tour of the facility, reassured the public that the ongoing work will stabilize electricity distribution. He also dismissed claims that the government is selling the Electricity Company of Ghana. He clarified that the Mahama-led administration is seeking private sector participation to improve efficiency in power distribution.
At the beginning of next month, we should see the flow of gas, which means that power supply will be much more enhanced. We have a challenge though. We've received a letter from NGAS threatening not to supply the gas even after this exercise because there's an outstanding liability of about $75 million. And so government has to scramble around and find a way of meeting this huge challenge.
Gonna brief there for you. Let's get into some real work now. An MP prevented from addressing the House today as a contempt conviction and arrest warrant hang over the head of Akwetia MP. Let's get into that right now. I want to show you something. Well, looks like I'm not ready to show you anything. But the moment I wanted to show you was that the majority caucus rejected any attempt by the Akwetia MP to make any contribution whatsoever to discussions on the floor of Parliament today. Majority Leader Mahama Yariga explains why. Was a lot of drama in Parliament, and I was hoping to show you that drama. But the Akwetia MP, who himself is facing a conviction and an arrest warrant, wanted to make a point in Parliament. In fact, the Speaker will go ahead and call him to make that statement. But comes the Majority Leader, who interjects on the point of order, and this is what he has to say.
We caution him in this House. We said, look, there is a court order restraining you from being sworn in. If you refuse and you allow us to swear you in, you will be held accountable. And he said, yes, he's ready to be held accountable. Now he has been held accountable by the courts, and he wants to come and use this Parliament as a shield. Mr. Speaker, it won't happen. This side will not allow that. We will not allow him to make the statement on this floor because he has been convicted by the courts. At least he should go and file an appeal. He should file an appeal. He should seek to state the execution of the orders of the court. Then we know that due process is being complied with. Mr. Speaker, I want to indicate clearly that if you insist and admit this statement and you allow him to make the statement, this side of the House will wash our hands off and then we'll walk out and leave you to make your statement. We'll wash our hands off because we don't believe in undermining the judiciary. We don't believe in undermining the rule of law. We will not join you to undermine the rule of law.
Now stay with me, let me explain that. Because that position stems from a Koforidua High Court ruling that issued an arrest warrant for the Akwetia MP, Ernest Kumi. He was convicted of contempt of court after ignoring an injunction placed on his swearing in on January 6th. And that's what the Majority Leader, Mahama Ayaga, refers to. Because members of the minority side on midnight January 6th said they were ready to bear the consequences. Now they say this whole situation is unfair. Take a listen.
Mr. Speaker, do you have any notice from the court? No. Mr. Speaker, do you have any notice from the court? No. Mr. Speaker, it is very important. Mr. Speaker, it is very important that we do not go searching newspapers. We do not go looking at newspapers or listening to news to be finding out which member of parliament has been convicted. Mr. Speaker, that is not our job. Our job, very respectfully, is to come and represent our constituents in Parliament and serve as legislators. Mr. Speaker, if there is any conviction, same will be served on you. Until that is done, Mr. Speaker, very respectfully, it does appear that what we are being fed in this House by the distinguished, by the venerable Majority Leader,
what they seek to do is politics, and we cannot allow politics to impugn the integrity of the courts. We cannot. Mr. Speaker, this House is mandated in law not to engage in an irregularity, in any unlawful conduct. We cannot participate in it, and we cannot allow the House, properly constituted, to engage in it. It cannot. The information before this House is that the honorable member for Akwete has been convicted and he's become a fugitive of justice. He's a fugitive of justice. Mr. Speaker, for what follows conviction is sentencing. What he should be doing is to sending his lawyers to the court, to the High Court, to submitting a plea of a locutus pending sentencing.
I am a practitioner. Mr. Speaker, I am a courtroom practitioner. I know courtroom practice and courtroom rules. So I'm talking law. And I want my colleagues to listen. I'm saying that Honorable Kumi had filed a stay of proceedings application, which application was pending before the court at the time that the same court was seized with the application, committing him for contempt. It is most unfair for Mr. Dafiameko to describe a respected colleague as a fugitive. Never again.
Well, proceedings of Parliament quickly came to an end as the debates quickly degenerated in raucous drama.
Then we saw what? Yes. Well, that's all right. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the NDC side, when they talk, they don't want anybody also to have this opportunity. It was started by you. I am responding to your argument. Why? We cannot respond to you.
You let me listen to you.
Mr. Speaker, he has to finish. He has to listen to me.
I'll come back to you.
If he has a point of reply, he must. When Afenyo Markin speaks, many of you will get that. When Afenyo Markin, many points of order.
Honorable members.
Why? Many points of order.
Honorable members.
You cannot tolerate.
If you wouldn't allow me, I will go ahead, suspend the House, and
you will not adjourn the House. Mr. Speaker, they want an adjournment. We would argue the case today. We will argue no adjournment. Mr. Speaker, we will argue. Let us argue the issues with adjournment.
Honorable members.
You are running away. You brought your application, you are running away.
Honorable
members. You brought your application, you are running away.
The time is
to 4 o'clock. You are in my hands. The House is accordingly adjourned.
Well, I want you to take note that this is the second Friday that some sort of drama has led to an abrupt end of proceedings in Parliament. Will this be the case for a long time to come as the two sides disagree on one thing or the other? But more importantly, let's talk about this Akwetia MP, the conviction that hangs over his head, the arrest warrant on the other hand, and how it all plays into the debate we have seen on the floor today. Dr. Rashid Draman is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Doc, I appreciate you talking to us this evening, but let's start off with what we've seen so far on this day in Parliament. The conviction and arrest warrant of the Akwetia MP became a stumbling block for him in making any contributions on the floor. Is there justification for that?
It's very interesting how we have come almost 360 degrees from November, December to this point, when the current minority was projecting itself as, the respecters of the court system. And we've seen when they ran to the court to stay certain things that were happening in Parliament. And at that time, the current majority, I think, was vehemently opposed to some of the things that were coming from the court. And fast forward, we are now seeing the former majority, now minority, trying to, if I can put it mildly, disobey what the court is saying. And then the majority now, the former minority, defending seriously the court. I think what this tells us is that our politicians and our members of parliament ought to be very, very careful and ought to remember at all times that the right things have to be done. Here's a situation where I think a member has been convicted. And in this particular case, we're all witnesses to what happened on the night of January 6 leading to January 7, when the Clerk of Parliament was on his feet as chair of the Parliament at the time because the Speaker was not elected. And he said, there is a document before the House, and so on and so forth. And then we heard how the minority that was on his feet defending the honorable member who was being the subject of the court proceeding. And to quote him, and I think he was quoted, "He will bear the consequences." And I think the consequences are upon them. And I believe once the courts have made a pronouncement, Article 118 of the Constitution doesn't save the honorable member. He is now a convict, based on what the court has said, no matter what level of court and so on. So
with what you're saying now, right?
Yes.
How do we line that up against the immunities that our MPs also enjoy? Because he's a sworn-in MP at this point.
Well, he's a sworn-in MP, and true, he enjoys immunity. He cannot be served when he's on his way to Parliament, during parliamentary proceedings, and so on and so forth. Yes, so when he is there, no arrest can be made. But I think the court has made a pronouncement And I think even if there were precedents where some of these things have happened, like in the case of Honorable Jachikwesin, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth, hide and seek with the court until the elections happened. Our parliament must be seen to be the house that is upholding the rule of law, because that's a source of law in our country. I mean, they are the 276 members that we have elected to go and make the laws that govern our country. And they should be the first group that should respect the laws of this country.
Right. But if the police,
oftentimes,
if the police is serious or interested about carrying out this order by the court, there are processes. If you listen to the Menchia South MP, it would appear the process of serving the court order on the speaker in order for the court's order, so to speak, to take effect has not taken place. Until then, there is no justification for Ernest Kumi to be prevented from making any remarks on the floor. So perhaps then we may be concentrating on the wrong group of people, and we should be talking to the police as to whether or not, as to why, more so to speak, they haven't carried out the orders of the court. Is that not the case?
So, yeah. So let me take you back a little bit to recent history. And again, I believe, I mean, I don't know what the Speaker of Parliament is thinking at this moment, but I believe maybe he would have been saying to himself, this is exactly what I was trying to prevent. You remember, I mean, during the challenges that we faced towards the end of the 8th Parliament, the Right Honorable Speaker said, look, this is what I was trying to prevent when we had some agreement with the court, with the Chief Justice some time back, to make sure that, for instance, there are days, specific days on which Parliament could be served, and the processes and procedures of how this should be done. That was violated. And the Right Honorable Speaker had occasion to speak about how that process was violated, because at the time, one group in Parliament wanted a case to be heard very quickly and very fast. And you remember the back and forth between the Speaker and the Majority Leader then. That was a precedent that was being set. Because if Parliament was united about, look, there are procedures on how and when members of Parliament, the Speaker, and so on could be served, I believe this conversation would have been mute by now. But, you know, once political parties, I mean, start pursuing their interests, sometimes they forget that, you know, majorities today could be minorities tomorrow. And this is what we are facing right now. So you make this argument, somebody will say in the 8th Parliament, this same kind of arrangement that was being pursued by Parliament was put aside, and some other kind of practices were brought in order to ensure that at the time one party had its way with the courts and in Parliament. So going back to my point that I made earlier, I think what this is telling us, and I hope the politicians are learning, both sides, you know, they have to be prepared to do the right thing at all times and make sure that, you know, you don't be seen to be against the court because you are on this side of the house, or supporting the court because you are on this side of the house. What is right and what is legal and what is the right thing to do, we should be seeing our members of Parliament championing that at all times.
I see. And you know, this point you have just made brings to mind that after the events in Parliament, the minority leader held a news conference where he insinuated, so to speak, a number of things, and I want us to take a listen to that. I'll pick your quick thoughts on that, and then we'll wind down on this conversation.
As for the NDC, if they think that Today, they are using Neskumi to do politics. Today is Friday. We are reminding them that next week, Thursday, the president will be coming to the chamber. We are reminding them. They've forgotten that they are in government. We are reminding the NDC. So, if today they are the avant-garde of the rule of law, we've heard. Good. On Thursday, there are other matters of social justice in the country that perhaps they have overlooked. So if they are showing us a part of social justice and the rule of law, we have heard them. From Tuesday, we, the minority, God willing, will also begin the process of bringing to the fore all the issues that the government must undertake to bring social justice in our country. And we will not limit it to Tuesday. We'll go on Wednesday, go on Thursday, Friday, and we'll continue until all the issues of social justice are addressed. So we thank them for forcing an adjournment today. We thank the NDC majority caucus. We thank them. These are useful lessons.
Alexander Penyo marking there. He is minority leader. Doc, you heard him. What do you think he was driving at with those words he uttered?
I think what I can read from that is perhaps maybe they are going to frustrate government business. I mean, that's my deep reading into it. But on the surface, I hear him talk about the pursuit of social justice. I believe that is welcome news. We will rely on the MPP minority to be those who would pursue social justice for us in this country. I mean, if only it is done not on the altar of politics or not to score any political points, but rather genuinely to bring to the fore issues of concern, issues that affect all of us ordinary Ghanaians. But let me say this. You know, I would have thought that maybe the minority leader, particularly given what we saw him do in the 8th Parliament, and given all his pronouncements, I'm sure you can pull out some of the tapes about the fact that they are a party of rule of law, and they are a party that use the law to argue their case. I don't know what he'll be saying about, I mean, the court that sat in Kofridwa and made, I mean, this pronouncement about the honorable member. I mean, that's a court properly constituted. And I would have thought that maybe the party and the member will go to the court and argue their case out because they are a party of law and they respect the rule of law. So I think there are a lot of mixed messages here. But in terms of the pursuit of social justice, I think we commend them for that, and they should pursue social justice because we need that in this country. Indeed,
Doc. We'll see how that plays out. Thank you so much for talking to us. Dr. Rashid Draman is Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Now, listen, let's move on to a rather heart-rending story. 10 years on, Gregory Afoko now secures another bail. But will he be set free is a question I ask. Listen to this. 10 years, 3 general elections, and 1 mistrial. That is how long it has taken for the man accused of the 2015 murder by acid of the NPP Upper East Region chairman to be granted bail. The last time Gregory Afoko was a free man, President John Dramani Mahama was in his first term as president. The Nana government took over and continued to prosecute the case, and for 8 long years, he remained behind bars. Twice he came close to regaining his freedom, albeit temporarily, when jurors almost reached a decision. The arrest of a second accused person crumbled the entire case. Now, that meant restarting the trial. His co-accused will be found guilty and sentenced to death. But old Gregory, as he is affectionately called Greg, came out with a mistrial that led to his lawyers applying for bail, which the court granted, only for the state to pursue the bail and have it rescinded. Now, if this was a film, you'd agree with me that we will say that the plot thickened with every twist and turn. But no, this is the lived experience of Gregory Afoko, and tonight, his lawyer, Nanaya Ose, explains the trial is and was politically motivated.
I have always thought that Afoko's trial had more to do with politics than a simple criminal matter. There were people within his big brother's party who wanted to do him in. Nobody can convince me that there wasn't any political hand pushing the matter. Why would the police decide that they won't bring somebody to come and execute a bail bond? You think the police on their own, what interest did they have? Somebody clearly was pushing the police. And I say this without any contradiction. I am very clear in my mind. But I believe that this time, the police will be law-abiding.
Well, that's his lawyer, Nanaya Ose. Tonight, Gregory Afoko is once again at the doorstep of regaining his freedom, pending retrial of the case. And Accra High Court granted him bail for the 3rd time since being on remand 10 years ago. The bail is set at 500,000 cedis and 1 surety. Now, Gregory is also expected to report to the chief investigator of the regional or the regional crime officer, either ways, in Accra once every 2 weeks until the case is concluded or determined. Tonight, about 20% of Ghana's prison population, and I think you should know this, 20% of Ghana's prison population are on remand. Some researchers have put that number at 1,666. Many human rights advocates have since called on the country to step up efforts to reduce remand numbers in this country. Amnesty International is one such organization. It also took a keen interest in Gregory Afoko's case. Tonight, we're joined by board chair of the Ghana chapter of Amnesty International, Francis Nyantechi. I appreciate you talking to us, Francis. But listen, Amnesty International has followed this case closely. You've advocated for his release on bail. Now it is here. How does this come to you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Well, it's a welcoming news, better late than never. For us, we think that the bill has overly delayed, and I think that we have, as a state, we have violated on the right of him because our laws clearly define that every offense is bailable. Keeping somebody in prison for 10 years make nonsense of the adage of innocence before found guilty or whatever the lawyers will say. Because if you put somebody on an alleged offense for solid 10 years, I think it's punishment enough, and it's something that as a country we shouldn't tolerate. So for us, it's regrettable that we have to keep somebody in prison on allegation that the state has failed for 10 solid years to prove its evidence before a competent court of jurisdiction. So it's very regrettable. Just that we welcome it.
Indeed.
It's better late than never.
I see. Now, coincidentally, if we would like to call it that at all, bail condition is still set at 500,000 cedis. Back in 2019, when he got that bill, which was later rescinded, it was also set at 500,000 cedis. Excessive this time after, what, 6 years?
The bill condition is too high, but I must also say that our court system isn't helping enough. Under what circumstances will the court support the state to keep somebody in prison for 10 years. It is this same court that said that every offense is bailable. And so it's very problematic that we as a state would allow such a thing to happen. For me, it is not only Gregory Afoko. There are hundreds and thousands of Ghanaians who are suffering this same situation. And I think that our courts should be up and doing. I mean, it's very unfortunate. The state has all the necessary apparatus to investigate crime and provide evidence before the court, but the court always, and most of the time, accept the generally flimsy excuse of saying we are still doing investigation. What sort of investigation should go on for 10 years? And for that matter, an individual who is suspected, the person hasn't been convicted, and that person is allowed to stay in prison for 10 solid years. I think that our courts should be up and doing. It's very unfortunate that our court system allows such a thing to be perpetrated.
I see. We've also seen under this administration how certain cases, including some high-profile ones, have been dropped. Is it time for Gregory's case to be dropped after 10 years of holding him a suspect and no clear headway in prosecution?
Thank you. As human rights activists, we will encourage the state to investigate all crimes and adduce proper evidence before court for the court to adjudicate. But if the state fails to provide the necessary evidence, I mean, the state has all the human and the material resources to investigate any case and provide evidence before court. And so if for 10 years, you cannot adduce evidence before the court, then I think that the state needs to first and foremost apologize to Gregory Afoko for that unfortunate 10 years detention. We must state that remand should not be used as a substitute in punishing people. I don't see why somebody should be in remand for 10 years. It is more than a punishment. And we should know that the conditions in remand is entirely different from conditions in prison. And so, I mean, if the state cannot provide evidence to prosecute this case within the shortest possible time, the state has a responsibility to apologize to that young man for the way they've tortured him.
I see. I also remember clearly how Amnesty International warned, the government about how cases like Gregory's continue to dwindle our human rights fortunes, if you like. Where are we now on that index?
Thank you. It's not making it better. We can count the number of people who are in remand for a number of years on alleged murder and other offenses. So it's not getting better, but I think that as a state, we have a responsibility to respect the laws we have made and also not using the system because it suits us. It's very unfortunate. I'm telling you, being a journalist, being it petty offenders, the way our system has been crafted, I don't think that we are respecting the rights of Ghanaians, especially when it comes to our criminal justice system. A mere accusation seems to be a conviction. And in this case, that is how it has been perceived to be. The moment you are accused, the court of public opinion and those that have the power to investigate treat you as if you have already been convicted. And our human rights records is not getting better in all aspects. So we have a responsibility as a nation to purge ourselves of abuse of Ghanaians and rights of citizens, especially those in remand and even in prison itself.
Indeed, a responsibility indeed. But what lesson should Gregory Afoko's case teach us, teach our judicial system?
I think that the first step that we should is to appeal to the judiciary. The constant refusal of judges to grant bail with the excuse that we are still investigating an issue has virtually been abused by the court and the investigators. That is one we should critically reflect on that. Is it worth that every now and then we walk to the court and say we are doing investigation on an issue, and for 4, 5, 10 years, people are incarcerated when we have not actually proven them guilty of the offense they are being accused of? And so the judiciary and the investigators, I think that we should reach a point that if investigators are unable to establish the facts within a reasonable time, people should be granted bail for them to report unreasonable notices to the police while the investigation and the prosecution goes on.
Right.
That is one. Two, I think that the state investigative authorities should, as a matter of urgency, prioritize the right of citizens. A mere accusation is not an offense. And this is captured in our constitution and in several laws.
I see. We know that at last check, counsel for Gregory had mentioned that they were still trying to meet the bail conditions, particularly the 500,000 cedis involved. So at this time, it's unclear if that has been done. Unfortunately, our calls haven't been answered yet to be able to ascertain that. But if Gregory may or may not be watching this, what would you like to say to him tonight?
Thank you. For me, it's an unfortunate incident that happened. Unfortunately, we have not been able to identify the culprit. So it is worrying that for 10 years, he has to be in prison for an offense he has been accused of, but has not yet been proven guilty. I would suggest that he takes it in his stride, but if he's not proven guilty at the end of the day, the state should be ready to compensate him. And if the state fails to compensate him, I would advise him to sue the state for the necessary compensation. I mean, his arrest doesn't affect him as an individual. It affects his family, it affects his children, and people closer to him. And so I think that for him, he should be prepared. Of course, the 10 years is unfortunate. A lot of things have gone waste, but we are hoping that the right thing should be done. And if the state fails to do what is right, the state should be honest enough and humble enough to apologize to people that have been incarcerated wrongly and they have not been found guilty of the law,
right,
and if possible, compensate him for that.
Francis Nyantechi of Amnesty International, thank you so much for talking to us. Listen, many of you, and you know, I'd like to believe that is the case, are asking the question, what happens next? Will the case be dropped against Gregory Afoko this time, and perhaps for good? These are questions only the current Attorney General can answer at this point. Remember that since he's come to office, he's dropped certain cases for lack of prosecutorial evidence, and I believe I'm using the appropriate legal term here. Some of us have seen the announced ones, but I'm also reliably informed that it isn't only high-profile cases that the current Attorney General, Dominic Ayine, is looking into. He's also looking into cases where people have been abused by the judicial system, if you like, based on the nature of the prosecution against them. And that's why some of these cases have been dropped. But again, like I said, these are questions only the Attorney General can answer at this point. And so at a news conference earlier this month, we put that question to him. Take a listen. Oh, right. We do not have it. But I do believe that he responded to that question from Alfred Okante when he held that news conference, attempting to explain why those cases he had dropped. Remember the cases, the Cocoa Board case against Opuni and Seydou Agongo, that case was dropped. He explained why those things had to happen. And you know, journalists asked him questions. Our Alfred Okanse also asked about the Gregory Afoko case and whether or not the Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayene, will look into those as well, or that case in particular as well. This is what he had to say.
Owning up, fellow citizens, to stand by the professional decision I took that in my current position as Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and for that matter, the prosecutor in those cases, I was not going to suddenly recant my professional position and continue to prosecute the accused persons in those two cases. No new evidence has been presented to me upon assumption of office as Attorney General to cause me to abandon my professional convictions. The memo on Afoko, I'm really very keen about Gregory Afoko's case. So the memo from the Chief State Attorney who is prosecuting the matter came to me 2 days ago. Okay? As I said, I don't want any of my decisions to be arbitrary without any reasonable basis. So if I'm in terms of due process, internally, I ask those who are handling the matters, you know, to write memos to me, briefing me generally. If I review the memo and I have questions to ask, I either call them to my office or I meet it and say, can you explain A, B, and C, D in a supplementary memo to me? Okay? Then when they do that, and I'm convinced, I will take a decision one way or the other. So I have a memo on Gregory Afoko. Okay? I know he has suffered enough. He has suffered a lot. All right? I will take a decision on him, but I'll do so on the basis, of reasoned, on the basis of the fact that I have reasons for it.
So there you have it. Dr. Dominic Ayene, the Attorney General, does have plans for Gregory's case. And like I was saying, it's not only high public interest cases or high profile cases, but it's also looking at individual cases that are going through prosecution in this country. And those that do not hold substance or merit, he's given second chances to. He's pulling out of some of those cases and dropping charges where necessary. And like you heard in that video, he said that he will look into Gregory's case. Gregory's case is of importance to him. And so in the coming days, we'll see what happens and we'll report it to you here. But my question to you now is, what is your state of the nation? We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is still Ghana Tonight live on TV3. Thank you so much for your company. Now, February 27th, that's the date to mark on your calendar. See you and I'll tell you why. Well, and that's because President John Dramani Mahama would deliver his first State of the Nation address on Thursday, February 27th. Majority Leader Mahama Yariga made the announcement in Parliament when he presented next week's business statement. The Majority Leader said security arrangements have been put in place to ensure a smooth process.
President John Dramani Mahama will be in this House on Thursday, 27th of February 2025, in accordance with Article 67 of the Constitution, to deliver the State of the Nation address. All honorable members are to be seated in the chamber 9:15 a.m. This is because once His Excellency the President enters the chamber, national security will not allow any member access into the chamber. Honorable members are not to enter the chamber with a stranger, so do not bring a stranger into the chamber. Only the deputy speakers and the two leaders will have access to the speaker's lobby. Usually the president will come in, go to the speaker's lobby, and then from there will be ushered into the chamber.
Well, on the same subject, Minority Leader Alexander Apenyo-Makin wants measures put in place to allow early entry of the president into the chamber.
Patiently await the president. There are two issues I want the leader of government business to ferry to His Excellency the President at Jubilee. One, in the past, when His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo had to come here on a similar constitutional exercise, he had to wait for several hours before entering the chamber. I hope that the leader of government business will put in place the necessary support systems to allow an early entry of.
Listen, we've been asking some of you what the state of your nation is at this point, and I'll take those comments. But before we do that, let's bring in now Musa Dankwa, Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. Musa, I appreciate your time tonight, but is there anticipation at all for President John Dramani Mahama's first SONA?
I should think so. Barely 2 months into his administration, we've seen the polls showing that he's very popular at the moment. And also people are anticipating that he will begin to put in measures to implement what he promised the people of Ghana. I think there's a lot of anticipation around 24-hour economy, how that is going to pan out. Expectations around how he's going to turn around the overall economy as a whole, which I believe the budget would probably throw more light on that. But he needs to emphasize or need to tell Ghanaians where his focus will be. He also needs to assure people that the fight against corruption would continue and that the sword will not just be one-sided, and that he will be firm and fair in dealing with issues of corruption. I think people are really angry at things that are coming out, and he needs to reassure Ghanaians that everything will be investigated, or what needs to be investigated will be investigated.
Absolutely, but that popularity you talk about, how is it likely to work in his favor?
Work in his favor by taking bold steps. You know, when you have this goodwill from the people and you set the priorities right and you are frank with the people that this is what we are up against and this is the kind of sacrifice or support I need you to give me, I think he will get it. And he will be able to do a lot in the times where his popularity is very high. So he needs to capitalize on that and make sure he rises on the back of that approval rating, and to do what Ghanaians want him to do. His promise to Ghanaians, they haven't forgotten. He made a lot of promise. Some of them will be difficult to achieve, but they must see that he is doing something about them. I don't think they expect things to quickly change. But I think they are hopeful. If you look at what they are telling us in terms of their optimism for the future.
Musa, we are quickly running out of time, but briefly elaborate those key issues that the Ghanaian people will be expecting on February 27th.
You know, if you look at the top issues on voters' mind before the election, it was the economy, number one, job situation, number two, education, number three, and then I think five or so, corruption. We've seen some effort around corruption and fight against corruption and the state capture around the oral. We are waiting to see what steps will be taken to make sure that those that are culpable are taken to the court.
Right. Musa, I'm afraid we'll have to end our conversation. I promised our viewers I'll read some of their comments after asking them what the state of their nation is. And these are some of your questions. Excuse me, the answers that you put to the question. What was the question we asked? What key issues do you think President Mahama should address in his first state of the nation? And light and oral is what some of you have said, very similar to what Mr. Dankwa was addressing. Fight against corruption, the roadmap in fighting Galamsey, and how the president will help recoup Ghana's stolen money and lands, very critical. Honorable Edu Tete says, Galamsey, water issues, how down our finances are, and measures his team has put in place to get us up again. Also, how long it will take to revive the economy, I suppose. Edmond Amenyangle Adombire, I expect him to address issues on correcting the wrongs in the economy, transforming ways of bringing health to the doorsteps of the vulnerable in society, and inviting meaningful decisions for good policies. And Kwame says, very simply, oral. But that's all I can take at this. Well, one more, and then we move on to some other things before we go. Free sanitary pad for the girl child in schools, 1,000% for that one. Rural and deprived area allowances, really crucial. 24-hour economy, halt all small-scale mining, take owners of concessions through 2 weeks of workshops. It looks like Jeverina Amwa, you have a list of things you want the president to do. We're asking what the state of the nation is about 1 month into his administration. But those are all the comments I can take. As always, a quick reminder that you can join the team at 7 a.m. here on TV3, streaming across all our socials and YouTube on 392.7 FM and on 3news.com. Key points will come your way. Alfred Okansi and the gentleman, his panelists, more correctly, will be here to bring you the discussions on the week's biggest stories. On Sunday, I'll see you on Hot Issues at 2 p.m. But I want to show you a snippet of it. Look at this. Made an appointment for the central bank. I recall that weeks ago, the appointee had visited the place to familiarize himself with the workings of the central bank. A lot of debate followed that exercise about whether or not that appointment by itself was wrongfully done. You have extensive knowledge based on the positions you have held in the past and what you hold now. What do you think about that debate?
Well,
Oh, that was on purpose. You can't hear the answer. If you want to hear what the Council of State member, former Chief Justice, Justice of the Supreme Court, Research Fellow of the IA, Justice Sophia Akufu thinks about the appointment of the central bank governor, which was a huge debate in Parliament. At the time, there was no, Council of State constituted. Join me 2 p.m. Sunday here on TV3. Get those responses and other issues to do with governance and the Council of State. Yeah, I did that on purpose. I'll see you same time Friday here on Ghana Tonight. Thank you so much for your company. Bye-bye.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.